Let's talk to Andrew Bush. He's the author and publisher of the Bush Update. Dan Greenhouse is here. He's chief global strategist at BTIG. And Peter Schiff joins us, CEO of Euro-Pacific Capital. You know, I understand that they removed some things from the statement today. But I just have a totally different. I'm going to you, Peter. Totally different. I read the New York Times Sunday with this big story about the Fed seeking to raise inflation. And I believe under Janet Yellen, just continuing Ben Bernanke, I call her the Empress of Doves, that they would like to see an inflation rate of somewhere around 3 to 5%, like guys like Paul Krugman have been advocating for years. Now, they're poured a lot of money in. So far, it hasn't happened. But I think that's the Fed policy.
Well, that is the policy. And you can imagine how bad inflation would actually be if the official numbers were 4 or 5%, because I think it's already higher than that. And the main reason that it's not even higher is because we've been able to export that inflation abroad. But you go back to this Fed statement. The Fed doesn't mention taper. It says adjust monetary policy. Adjustment doesn't imply a direction. I think what the Fed is getting ready to do is increase the amount of QE, not diminish it.
See, Andy Bush, the consumer price index actually is slowing down. I mean, what was it today? Year on year, 1.2%, something like that. It's an odd thing that all the reserves the Fed has printed has not yet been converted into the money supply, hence causing inflation. But I think they're going to hang in there. That's why I think they're going to keep buying bonds and keep hoping that somehow the inflation rate goes up. I think that's the policy. I don't care what the FOMC statement said today. They want a 3% or higher inflation rate.
That's right. It's something that certainly would make Chicago Fed President Charlie Evans very happy because he's advocated that. But the Fed is like a rabid dog chasing its tail. If it lets the market know it wants to taper, then rates go up, and then, lo and behold, financial conditions grow tighter. And they mentioned that in September. But then as the market, reacted to them not tapering, financial conditions eased. And in this statement, they get rid of that statement about financial conditions tightening. It's a bad cycle that the Fed's in. They're going to get trapped in this. I don't see really a clear way out. They have to keep their balance sheet. They won't ever. I'm not sure what they can do at this point.
They have no way out. They have no game. They have no exit strategy. They have no game plan. It's just as bad as the budget and tax committees in Congress. They have no exit strategy and no way out. But I'm just going to say this. Look, I call her Janet Yellen. With all respect, she's very smart, okay? She is the Empress of Doves, okay? That's what she is. And inflationism is the new goal at the Fed.
First of all, we have nothing on which we should base calling her the Queen of Doves.
No, Empress.
We have nothing to base
it on.
Why? Her whole record is like that.
But that said, let's step away from Paul Krugman for a second and bring up Ken Rogoff.
Right, who wants 6%.
Who wants 6% inflation.
Now, don't those voices mean something to you when you hear those quoted in a New York Times story?
These are, forget the New York Times story. Ken Rogoff has been saying this since day one. And I give him all the credit. He's someone I share a lot of views with. I should be associated with him. It would be great for me. But that said, there is something to be said in the literature for a burst of inflation or a moderately higher level of inflation than we've been experiencing. And inherent in this entire discussion, or underlying this entire discussion, is exactly what you brought up, which is that the CPI on a year-over-year basis is running less than the Fed's target.
Right.
So we can scream all we want about what the Fed's doing, and it's printing, and it's printing, and it's printing, based on the way that the government measures inflation, which, of course, is an important caveat. You're not getting it.
This story bothers me. It doesn't even have the patina of any control, let's say, over the value of the dollar, what I call king dollar.
That's the Treasury.
It doesn't have any. The Fed is a major. Yes, it is the Treasury, but the Fed is an important driver. And anyway, since when does higher inflation promote better economic growth? Since when does higher inflation help the economy?
It doesn't. It retards it. I mean, this is a ruse. They don't want more inflation to help the economy. It's not going to help the economy. What they want to do is sustain asset bubbles. They want to sustain government spending. They want to keep on monetizing debt. They're looking for an why they're not going to taper QE because they can't.
You think the Federal Reserve wants to create asset bubbles?
But that's all they've got. This whole phony economy is all they've got. They can't take away the punch bowl without bringing the party to an end. So they're going to keep on spiking it and making up excuses. But they're never going to tell the truth that they've got us addicted to this cheap money and that they can't take it away. The economy is actually in worse shape today than when the Fed first started QE1.
I think they are going to consciously, they've got these data-driven targets, but I think they don't want a higher target. They don't want a 2% inflation target, Andy Bush. They want more. I believe if they could get it, If they could get it, they'd like 3, 4, 5%.
That's the whole point. They can't get it.
Well, they're going to keep trying to get it. It's like an addiction.
Charlie Evans clearly made that point, and has made that point. If we've tolerated 1.5% inflation and the Fed's upper bound is 2.5%, then you can go to 3.5%.
Right.
So that's really the issue. But I'm, believe it or not, I'm with Peter. I agree with Peter on this. Inflation is kind of a ruse. I mean, getting higher inflation doesn't solve your problems.
Right.
I mean, you've got to get job growth, and the Fed can't do that. It really goes back to...
Listen to me. It's Dan Greenhouse.
Andy, I got to jump
sitting
in here.
on the set. Dan Greenhouse wants to become Kenneth Rogoff or Paul Krugman.
No, hold on. That's not fair.
And Greenhouse believes that the Fed can create and control what he just called, quote-unquote,
inaccurate
bursts of inflation.
Inaccurate.
Bursts of inflation.
That's not what I said.
I came into the business in the 1970s with bursts of inflation.
What you just said is an important point here. Inherent in what all three of you are saying is that all inflation is created equal. And it's not. Nobody wants 1970-style inflation. Nobody wants to get
control it. Give me an example.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that point. But let's not pretend 3% inflation rate is the same thing as an 8% or 10% inflation rate.
But why is making the cost of living go up good for the economy?
Right.
What Ben Bernanke is saying, the typical American, prices are not high enough.
So then why have any inflation at all?
Well, yeah, we shouldn't.
We shouldn't have any inflation.
Yeah, we didn't have. Look, we were on the gold standard. We didn't have any inflation. Prices were coming down.
The gold standard,
and that was great because it raised the standard of living of average Americans because their wages gained value, prices came down. That's what a healthy economy has.
For 60 years, we had a depression every 7 years.
No, we didn't. I will tell you this. I happen to agree with you about the dollar. And I don't think they care one whit about the dollar. I call it King Dollar. I think they ought to use commodities and gold as a marker. But Andy Bush, before we go, again, I thought the FOMC statement today was very disingenuous. The economy looks lousy, Andy. Can we get that on the table? The jobs numbers, I don't care how you trend them, 3-month trend, jobs numbers are falling. I got another one for you, just as bad, if not worse. Basic business investment in long-term capital projects is actually declining. Consumer spending slowing down. Automobile spending slowing down. You think the Fed doesn't know that?
Well, and here I'll throw one more out at you, and this is really critical for job creation. Small business formation. It's cratered since 2005, and the Fed knows that by engaging in quantitative easing, they've really taken away the onus on the government, meaning Congress and the president, to do something to help small businesses.
And why shouldn't,
now, that's the key point, and I think a lot of people miss that.
The Fed should have a third mandate to create small businesses.
Why shouldn't Rand Paul, Andy, you go to Washington a lot, why shouldn't he have his day in the sun and let him take a vote on this GAO audit of the Fed? Why not? Nobody knows what the Fed is doing. Nobody understands their so-called guidance. They change their ideas. 1 minute it's this. Why shouldn't they have a discussion? You know what? In the Constitution, it said Congress sets the value of money thereof. I'll give you the last word, Andy.
Yeah, I think it's not a bad idea, but I think it's bad to hold up the confirmation. They do need a vote on this. He has a good point, and the Fed does need to be looked at a little bit more skeptically, given the size of their balance sheet and what they're doing without any oversight.
We just had a 10-minute conversation about the Fed.
It's been 5 years of pouring money in, and so far, the economy, all right, it's not as bad as it was in 2008, but so far, this is the worst recovery since World War II. I got to get out. Andy Bush, thank you. Dan Greenhouse, Peter Schiff, really appreciate it.